Turn on. There we go.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes. Hi.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Max.
Hi,
My pronouns are they, them. I am transgender. I'm non-binary. Christine is my mom. So just to kind of give you like a little bit of a heads up on how I'm going to run things, I'm going to talk at you for about half an hour or so, and then kind of open the floor to questions, comments, discussion, stuff like that. So at first, I'm gonna just kind of run you through some terminology and we're gonna do vocab, basically.
Okay.
So when I say that I'm transgender and I'm non-binary, what that means is that a transgender person is someone whose gender identity doesn't really match their assigned sex at birth. So when you're born, a doctor looks at you and makes a snap judgment call and says, you're a boy, you're a girl. Very few follow-up questions. And a lot of, basically the rest of your life rolls out on the basis of that first moment.
Mhm.
For quite a lot of people, that's not the case. So funny anecdote, my mom will say that all through her pregnancy, she swore up, down, sideways that I was going to be a boy. I'm sure that I'm going to have a boy. And then for a while, she was like, and then surprise, you were born and you were a girl. And it was like, plot twist, bitch, took a third option. So, you never know. We always change our minds. And when I refer to myself as non-binary, that means that I don't identify as a male or a female. So you will have people so the idea of binary, it comes from computer coding. Binary is a language that is made of ones and zeros. So the idea of a binary is you have two options. So a non-binary person is someone that doesn't identify with either of the two options. Non-binary identities and like non-binary like genders are actually very typical throughout the world. There's a lot of different cultures and countries that have them. Our own indigenous population in Canada and in North America has two-spirit people who identify as literally two-spirit. They have both the female and the male aspect in them. A lot of Asian cultures have us, basically. A lot of Polynesian cultures as well. In Thailand, they have the Kathois, which are called ladyboys, in a very, very crude English translation. Polynesian cultures also have their own version of two-spirit and what have you. African cultures also have them, with like non-binary people were even recorded in ancient Egypt. So we've always been around. We're not especially common to a point, but we do exist. This isn't a new thing. The language around it and the verbiage around it is more talked about now, especially within the media, and especially as social media grows and people are able to connect one-to-one and talk about their own experience. Interestingly enough, over the pandemic, when people have had this ability to step back from kind of the social expectations around them while we've been in lockdown, a lot of people have been exploring their gender and sexuality and realizing that they do identify as transgender or non-binary or bisexual or gay or what have you. So that's a really fascinating thing that's been happening over the last couple of years. But it's not new by any stretch of the imagination, even if you're just hearing about it for the first time over the last couple of years. Personally, I've always known that I wasn't a boy or a girl. When I was a child, I was as likely to be the prince as the princess. When I was playing pretend, I always kind of skipped around between them. I was always very unapologetically trying to change my name from what it was. So as far as the lingo goes, what I hear a lot, a question that I hear a lot is, oh, but what's your real name? My real name is Max. I've been going by Max longer than I went by the name that mom gave me, which, no offense, mom, kind of sucked. So I bought a new one. So the old name of a trans person is referred to as a dead name. Usually, because I work in the service industry right now, I work in bars. Also, I look like this. People come up to me a lot. They ask me a lot of questions. So people will come up to me, and when they find out I'm trans, they'll be like, "Oh, what's your real name?" It's like, first of all, it's the one that I paid money for. Um, but I'll use that as a learning opportunity. It's typically kind of rude to ask trans people what their dead name is. Where this information becomes relevant to you guys is that loved ones and family members will often still refer to, they'll dead name trans people. They will still call us by what our old name was, whether out of malice or just because that's how they think of us. That is a thing that happens to us, and it's not great. And in general, with people, like I have a friend whose older sister is transgender, and my friend will refer to her by her old name, and I will correct him and be like, listen, man, like I know that you know it. I know that you respect your sister. I know that you love your sister, but the more that you say her old name, the more it makes people around think that it's okay to say her old name. And I guarantee if she was in the room, she wouldn't want it. She wouldn't like it. Some of us are more comfortable talking about what our old name was. I usually use it for jokes, but the minute someone calls me by it, then like we have a problem. It's very disrespectful. When I came out to my family, it was a bit of a difficult time. I came out in bits and pieces. Like I said, it's always been there. Sometimes we always know, and sometimes we find out later. It's like my understanding of myself really evolved with my access to the language to explain like what I was going through. So when I was younger, I knew gay and straight. And then when I learned the word bisexual, I was like, well, that sounds kind of right. And then I heard pansexual, which means that you're just attracted to like anybody and it's based on who the person is. And I was like, perfect, got it. But it took me a couple words to get to the right one. Like the first one matched 60%, the next one matched 70%, the next one matched 80%. And then I finally got the one that I was like, heck yeah, that's it, totally. And when it came to my gender identity as well, there was a period of time where I was talking to a lot of people who actually had dissociative identity disorder or multiple personalities, because in my own self, I felt sometimes I feel more male, sometimes I feel more female, and that wasn't really matching with the words that my culture was teaching me. And so multiple personalities actually made more sense than transgender, because at the time, we're talking like early 2000s, being transgender just meant you were one-to-one. You'll hear very common sayings that pop up like, oh, I'm a man trapped in a woman's body. Some trans people do feel that way. Not all of us. Honestly, personally, I feel like I am a person in a body trapped in a society, and the society isn't really built for me, and they don't really know what to do with me. So my experience has been to kind of like meet those one-liners about what it's like to be trans and to use those as talking points and education points. And that looks different depending on, I guess, what the context is and what the experience is. So I give a lot of educational lectures to classes and organizations. It's ranging from elementary school, college, university, high school students. I've talked to the local health unit for my county, as well as like the PR people for the Canadian Air Force, which is an experience. And just kind of tailoring what I'm talking about to the needs of the people. So there's a lot of information that I can give you and not a lot of time for me to give it to you. And so I will say that if once I get through this and after we have our chat, if you do have questions afterwards, you can shoot them to my mom, she'll shoot them to me, and sometime probably after this week, because I'm working a lot, I will get to them. But just throwing that one out there. I am going to give you some unfortunate bummer statistics now. So if you were to Google what the life expectancy of a trans person is, it's going to tell you 35. We tend to get murdered a lot. We tend to take our own life a lot. And I believe heart failure is also high up there in the causes. We have a really difficult time actually tracking the stats as far as loss of life for trans people, because we're also misgendered by medical authorities as well as by our own families in death. So you will hear of families who had rejected us in our lives, and after we die, they refuse to acknowledge our true identity and who we are as people. And this is something that you are likely to encounter in your own practice, because we often face violent deaths. We have a hard time living in peace. We have a hard time resting in peace, quite frankly. My own life has been full of violence, whether it's systemic violence, whether it's physical violence, whether it's sexual violence or emotional violence from the people around me. Today is honestly the anniversary of me getting like major head trauma and getting hate crimed last year. And I can crack jokes about it because that's how I deal with my shit. But is what it is. So there's a lot of unhappiness and unrest in people like me because of this. Because we know what we're up against, we know what we're facing, and a lot of people don't understand us, and they don't kind of take the steps to understand us. When I was growing up, the only trans people that I ever saw, like on TV shows or anything, were murder victims on CSI and a villain on a season of Nip Tuck. Like, we weren't people. Like, we were just bodies. And even trans people in media, we were generally portrayed by cisgender people. So a cisgender person is someone whose gender identity matches their assigned sex at birth. So people, like, what we found as far as media representation goes is that people wanted to tell our stories without us in it. But now with how advanced technology is, and the internet, social media, even like things like Twitter and TikTok and YouTube, we're able to tell our own stories. So you will see more visibility, but with more visibility comes more risk. We often experience discrimination in ways that a lot of people don't think of. So as a non-binary person, I was just explaining to a friend the other day that as far as my identification goes, so it took a minute for my name change to go through. And for a while, I was also, because like my gender presentation can really, really change from day to day. Like today, kind of felt like doing eyeshadow. Tomorrow, I could be in a man bun and a white beater. Like I can really range in what my presentation is. And it doesn't really matter what my presentation is as far as how people perceive me. I get gendered either way. I have been in a room at work and had one person call me she and one person call me he, and I'm like, can you guys figure it out? You're giving me whiplash here. But it really doesn't matter what I'm doing, it's what other people think of me. And so I'm really beholden to their perception and their expectation in a lot of ways. And so how like systemically this can become an issue for me, it's, like I can grow a beard. If I don't shave my face, and if I've just got my hair in a bun or I got a ball cap on and I'm running to Tim Hortons and I get into a fender bender, the cop that rolls up, if they look at me and look at my identification and decide that these things don't match, then that's a problem for me. Like that is potentially a ticket. That's potentially an identity theft charge. That's any number of things. I have gone to the emergency room a couple of times in the last few years because of being attacked. And prior to that, I went to the emergency room because of a complication of a surgery that I had, and I was denied treatment because the doctor said, I don't know anything about transgender people. Just bye. Sorry you waited in the ER for 9 hours, but go home. You know, we see these kinds of, there are things called microaggressions, which are like the little pebbles getting thrown at you every day of your life, little things that just kind of like chip away at you. And there's macroaggressions, which are, you know, someone sucker punching me. Having to go through all of that is exhausting. And trying to get other people to understand what I'm going through and what other people like me are going through, it's kind of a constant challenge and constant battle. This is what Mom meant when she was saying like it's hard on me. Like apparently we're all kind of having like an off week. Like this seems to be the consensus like across the board. Like I got 4 friends like waiting in the wings on Messenger being like, hey, I'm having a shit time. Like, cool, get to you in a minute. This can be difficult because right now in this venue, I am coming to you and I'm telling you about my life. I'm mentioning in a very offhand way, like shitty things that have happened to me that are quite frankly traumatic, and I have PTSD about it. This is also like what is expected of people like me anytime I leave my house. So like I said, I work in the service industry, I work in bars, I have people all the time. I'm about to use some rude language. Excuse the language. This is a quote. Someone has come up to me at work while I'm on shift and said, do you have a cock or a cunt? Like that, which my response was, I'm not fucking you either way, so I don't see how it's any of your business. But like, that's the kind of like very, very, like people treat us very, very badly and in very weird ways. Kind of a comparison that I've made before is that when a woman is pregnant and people will come up to her in public and touch her stomach, it's like when your body is going through something that is somewhat publicly visible, people treat you like public property. And that's very much a common experience with trans people, and the way that people will kind of both fetishize and demonize our bodies. Because make no mistake, there's so many people that will absolutely, like, people will hound me in like my messages for a date or the time of day or to sleep with me or what have you, and then turn around and not want to be seen with me in public and not want to be seen talking to me. And this is a very difficult thing to experience all through your life. Like in 2018, a bill was passed in Canada that added gender identity to the Canadian Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms. And I had one of my classmates, because I was in the child and youth care program at the time, I had one of my classmates say like, oh, well, why does it have to be gay rights? Why does it have to be trans rights? Why can't it just be human rights? It's like, well, Tina, because people don't treat us like humans. Like, I shouldn't have to be in college having a debate about this in my ethics class. But that's where we are. And when you live this kind of life, it can be difficult to have that acceptance from the people around you. When I came out as trans, basically what I did was I quit my job, put all my stuff in storage, I deleted my original Facebook, I disconnected my phone number, threw away my cell phone, and I moved from Kingston to Ottawa with a stranger off the internet, and nobody knew where I went, not even Mom. And I was gone for a couple of years. And I came back and I wrote a letter to everyone and I said, all right, cool. So my name's Max. I'm trans. Here's how it is. If you think it's hard for you, promise you it's harder for me. If you don't like it, I've just showed you that I can live without you. There's the door. Ballsy move. But quite frankly, a lot of people took the door. And the people who did stay didn't necessarily react well initially. This is where I, full disclaimer, had to have a conversation with Mom earlier to be like, I'm going to talk about some of the things that happened early on that didn't work. She was coming from a good place, for sure. A lot of my family was, that that I do still have contact with. But there was a lot of shitty comments made by people in my life, and maybe they, like, the most generous read is they thought they weren't being shitty, or they were also putting their feelings on the same level as my feelings, which, like, don't put me in a position where I'm responsible for your feelings about me. That's between you and your therapist. So this is an anecdote that I brought up in previous lectures. A thing that you will often hear from the family of living trans people is, I'm mourning the loss of my blank, son, daughter, what have you. So mom at one point had said, I'm mourning the loss of my daughter. You didn't have a daughter. I was like this the whole time. You're mourning the loss of your idea of me. And I'm out here fighting for my life to try to be me and to try to live and to try to continue on like this. And how I've described it is that it is a very uniquely messed up experience to be both talked about as though you are a murder victim and the perpetrator of a crime at the same time. And a lot of us go through this experience. There's a lot of people too that, because like when people like me pass away, they kind of try to rewrite history a little bit, as though they were there, they did accept them, they did say the right things. And that's not always the case. Listen, you can come with the best of intentions, but you do have to understand what you're saying and what you're doing. Because, like, for mom and for many parents, that I'm mourning the loss of seems like a very reasonable statement. Again, it's for you and your therapist. It's not for your kid to manage. It's not for your niece, nephew. Nibbling, by the way, is a gender neutral term for sibling's child. Just as a fun fact. Just the cutest word ever. It's not on us to manage. So at times when mom has talked about clients that she's had who are connecting with non-binary people who have passed, there's often a struggle to really affirm and acknowledge their identity. You're probably going to say things that might be jarring to a person who has lost a trans person, quite frankly. If they're that stuck in their idea of who we are rather than acknowledging who we are, I mean, like, that's, at the end of the day, like, it's a line that you guys have to walk when you are experiencing that, when you're interacting with that, about whether or not, because honestly, you can't change everyone's mind, as much as I'd like to. Honestly, like, I said this to mom earlier, I said this to my sister a couple days ago. I do a lot of education and advocacy work because I want things to be better for the kids who come behind me. What I'm doing is not going to improve the quality of my life, though, and I'm aware of that. And, like, that's a tough one to have to wrangle, to have to live in and sit with all the time. The biggest kind of discrimination that, or I guess not the biggest kind, the most common kind of discrimination that people like me face is the, oh, I didn't think of that kind of discrimination. Like, when I first started going to the college that I had attended, there was only gendered bathrooms, and I was getting, like, chirped at by people no matter what bathroom I used. And that's, like, just blanket rule, just don't talk to people in public bathrooms. Just throwing that one out there. Just don't do that. But when I asked the administration, like, why don't you have a single stall gender neutral bathroom? It was, well, we didn't think of that. It's like, okay, why can't I change, like, why do I have to identify like a male or female within the computer system? Why is that relevant information? Like, I'm not either of those things. Why can't you just add a third option? Well, we didn't think of that. Okay. When you send out all of your, like, letters, why does it automatically fill in Mr. or Mrs.? Like, why can't you just drop that? Like, well, we didn't think of that. And it's these little things that build up and build up and build up and build up. Like I just got a letter with a restraining order against the person that assaulted me, and it was titled Mr. I was like, okay. He's like, they've got it in my file that I don't identify as either. Also, just Pia, there is a gender neutral honorific that isn't Mr. or Mrs. It's spelt MX. It's pronounced mix. It works with every single name except mine. Because say Mix Max and tell me that that does not sound like some kind of trail mix. So, you know, is what it is. I missed out. Usually, like with my niece and nephew, when because they can't call me auntie, they can't call me uncle, I tell them to call me Captain. Captain Max. And that works. And that is the easiest workaround ever. And you'll find, especially with kids, that they will they'll have less of a problem with it than you think. You'll hear a whole lot of hand wringing from a lot of people all over the world about like, oh, well, but what about the children? Children probably don't care. Like, you'll have a little kid named Tommy come to school, and one day he'll just be like, I actually want to be called Thad. And all the other kids will be like, cool, okay, let's play Legos. Like, and that tends to be the experience, right? Kids get it in ways that adults don't want to get it. And I hear this a lot too from the people around me, that they just, like, I've got some people who say like, oh, well, we call you she sometimes because you wear makeup. Also, like, people were just like exclusively calling me he for several years, but then I just like, this is a mohawk. I'm just not sure what to do with it, so I just didn't cut it. But it is a mohawk. So when it was like to here, people were calling me he, and when it got to here, people were calling me she. I have a gay friend named Quentin who wears more makeup than I do, and people have no problem calling him he. So when I challenge these ideas and these perceptions of people, even in my friends and family, it can cause some strife. It can cause some upset. You know, there'll be people who also, when they misgender me, they will drag themselves behind the horse and cart for like an hour. It's like someone saying something, they'll be talking and they'll be like, oh, and I was talking to Max and she, and I'll just quickly correct them and be like, pronoun correction, they. And then it's, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You have to understand. First of all, if just never say you have to understand. Like, it's just an unnecessary statement, but you have to understand, like, like, you wear eyeshadow like twice a month, and and I was just raised like this and this and blah blah blah, and the I'm sorry goes on for so long that it puts me in a position where I've got to say, like, it's okay, it's not, don't make me comfort you because you've just stepped on my toes. The correction and the apology should be about the same length. Just, if I just go pronoun correction, they, you're like, right, sorry, they. Anyway, they were saying that, and then on we go. And this is with binary trans people as well. Also, it is worth saying that when someone, if it's a female to male trans person, calling him they is also misgendering him if his pronouns are he, him. What I will also encourage you to do, even if you are cisgender, is to get into the habit of announcing your own pronouns. Because that means that when we do it, we're not automatically outing ourselves. It creates an atmosphere of safety for us. Because when you are saying, like, ideally, my mom will open the next Zoom call with, my name is Christine, my pronouns are she, her. And then that creates a much safer atmosphere where we're not immediately identifying ourselves as trans, because that does open us up to all the shitty things that I've been talking about for half an hour. So I'm checking the time. We are at 7:35 EST. I'm gonna open the floor for questions at this point. Also, there's a chat function that I've not seen. Cool. Anything anyone wants to specifically talk about? I don't have a mic for you.
I unmuted. Okay.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
It just when you said that a lot of deaths are heart, well, that's so obvious. Why? I mean, the inner soul, the heart just of who that individual is broken. I mean, so when you said that, I was like, oh, no wonder, that the whole thing. And the other thing that you had mentioned with, I'm gonna talk a little more quiet. That when my son was brain injured at 6 months, I thought, just like your mom had thought, that it was a death for a while, and then I knew it was who I had envisioned, who I'd seen running, which you can't run or anything like that. So I could very much relate to that and understand that. And I just want to say, I mean, so much courage from you. It's just if I had just a little ounce of your strength, like pocket up and take it with me, out in my normal day of life, I would feel just so amazingly blessed. And so thank you for this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do hear similar sentiments at times about the courage of it all. I had I just started a new job a couple weeks ago. There's a young lad that I work with that was like, when did you choose to be trans? It's like, that's not how it works. It's when did I choose to be out? There is a quote from a very good actor. His name is Wentworth Miller. Came out as gay a couple of years ago. He wrote a very good essay about his identity and his experience. And in that essay, there is a line that he wrote that says, if it is a choice between others loving certain select pieces of me and me loving all of me, there is no choice. And that is something that resonates with me very strongly. As far as like courage goes, I try not to apply that kind of language to myself because I don't think about myself. Like, I'm doing what's necessary, at least like for me, and then as the follow-up for others. But I was also the one that like wore stupid outfits to high school so that people would bully me instead of like the kids that couldn't take it. So this is my skill set and I'm using it as well as I can. Because like not every trans person is able to get up here and talk about our experience like this. And nor should we. And that's what Mom was kind of referencing earlier on. That we are often like, we need to be experts in psychology, in social dynamics, in history, in linguistics, in biology, in absolutely everything, just to be able to explain why we should be allowed to exist. Like I get people who will come up to me and be like, well, like, I'm a man, I know I'm a man, like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, oh yeah, you've had yourself genotyped, you had your chromosomes like mapped, because there's also like there's more intersex people on the planet than there are natural redheads. And that's like, there's more than just male, female. There's more than just, like I said, the gender binary. You will begin to encounter more and more of us as more of us learn about it. Because there's quite a long time, like honestly, just within the LGBTQ history of North America, if you look at the beginning of the Pride movement itself, if you're looking at the beginning of the American Pride movement, which typically gets pinned on New York, or the one in Canada, which tends to be between Toronto and Montreal, they often begin with drag queens, because it's gay men who probably were actually trans, but that wasn't really available, and that language wasn't there, and that information and knowledge wasn't there. But drag was its own community, and now it's most people's experience with drag isn't kind of that grassroots gender exploration side. It's more the entertainment side. It tends to be RuPaul, which not my thing, but apparently good TV. You will run into more of us as time goes on and as we're able to be a bit more out. But don't mistake us being able to talk about our experiences with us necessarily being safe. What I would like for you folks to do is to kind of begin to look at the language around yourself, the language that you use, the language that other people use. I had a professor in college, my sociology professor, whose lecture notes and lectures all had, like, whenever he was talking about a group or about individuals, he would use the he or she. It's like, oh, someone in this society would be in this role, he/she would be doing. And I was like, it's so easy. Like, they is right there. You can say they. A pushback that a lot of people who use they, them as pronouns is the grammar of it all. People saying, like, oh, but that's plural. It's not. We've been using the singular non-gendered they for about 800 years now, actually. It's called non-disclosing language. A lot of people in a lot of fields need to use non-disclosing language. So when I was working in a high school, if I went to a service provider like someone from victim services and I was talking about one of my clients, I'd go to the person at victim services and I'd be like, hey, so I was talking to one of my clients today. They were wondering if they could access some of your services. Would you be able to set them up with like a referral to XYZ service? You know that I'm talking about one person when I say that. Using non-gendered language is a very, very important way to be like inclusive of everyone around you and to start to make it more hospitable for people. It's like a lot of people in queer relationships will refer to their significant other as partner rather than boyfriend or girlfriend. Like, I have been in a relationship and my partner has said, like, well, why, like, what do I call you? Like, I want to call you girlfriend. It was like, but I'm not your girlfriend because I'm not a girl. Like, you can call me your partner, call me your person, significant other half. It's lots of different words. Better half, because that's how that relationship went. He calls me up for relationship advice sometimes now. It's kind of funny.
I'm going to come across very ignorant because I'm just really trying to understand the words.
Go for it.
Okay. So you're trans non-binary, which means either or. I mean, you can identify as either or sex. Okay. If you have a trans binary,
yeah,
and they just, what would they, there's another term?
So a transgender person who is a binary trans person will be either female to male or male to female. So they were either assigned female or male at birth, and that in their heart of hearts and in their soul, they are not whatever they were assigned at birth. And so they have transitioned one to the other. So, like, as far as famous people go, God, I hate fucking talking about her because she's kind of a bitch, but Caitlyn Jenner is a male to female trans person.
So if Caitlyn, now, if she decided to have a female partner,
she'd be a lesbian.
She would be a lesbian then. I'm just trying to make sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Or she could be bisexual if she was attracted to both. So your gender and your sexuality are not, like, they're tied together, but they're not mutually exclusive. So you'll have some people who, like, I had a friend who was a female to male trans person. And so prior to transitioning, when he identified as female, he also identified as a lesbian. He was strictly interested in women. But after his transition, when he realized, no, I'm a man, he then identified as straight. because he was still only he only was attracted to women. This is also where another kind of snafu kind of occurs. In you can have people be really transphobic when it comes to sexual attraction and what have you. So this sucks. The transgender panic is a legal defense in like 48 states, wherein if someone were to go home with a trans person, find out that they're trans, freak out and murder them, they can use trans panic as a legal defense.
Oh my God.
So like that's the kind of thing that like we have to contend with, and like specifically as a non-binary person, you know, intimate partner violence is it's a risk for everybody. It is a higher risk for me. My experience has often been that I will become involved with someone, and usually I kind of only date my friends, and they'll be okay with my identity and be okay with my gender identity until we're far enough in that they start thinking about how it impacts them. And that's when I get does this make me gay? It's like, I don't know, man. Like, do you feel gay? Maybe it's just that you have an exception to the rule. Like, if people are into brunettes and then suddenly they date a blonde, doesn't mean that you've changed what you're into. It just means that like you found one exception. This can also lead to the whole murder problem. To say nothing of the whole corrective rape problem.
Yeah.
So just existing as a baseline, kind of shitty. I'm seeing a hand up or something beside my mom's. Yeah.
It's because I want to ask a question.
Yes. Hi. It's weird. I'm in her house, by the way. She's in that room. Like, my Wi-Fi's down.
Okay, so
What's up, Mom?
as okay, I'm just taking my camera off for a second. Okay.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
As a medium, our role is to be the voice for spirit.
Yeah.
And is to honor the voice of spirit. So in doing that, I try to be the best liaison for spirit. And if I've got somebody who's trans, like I told you that one day I had that dream of male to female, and actually today we were talking about it in Charlie's class about I didn't get either.
Gender neutral language.
So you had actually mentioned about when we are addressing family members. I think it's most important that we honor the person in spirit.
Yes.
And speak their truth. Correct?
Yes.
However it comes through. Most times spirit comes through in a loving way. Very seldom does it come through in a, you were an asshole to me and I don't forgive you. It doesn't usually happen that way, but
what's more likely to happen, quite frankly, is that when you acknowledge, spirit, the person that you were speaking to who is still here is more likely to actually be the resistant party, I'll say. Gender neutral language, gender inclusive language, not misgendering and disrespecting, the person who is gone.
Well, that was like the one mother that I had. She said, I want to connect with my daughter. And I'm like, okay. But I had that dream and it confused me. And then I connected. And then the evidence was very confusing to me. I wasn't even thinking along that lines.
So there are ways to kind of thread the needle in terms of, so this person is saying daughter, 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 and you can say child. I'm talking to your child.
Exactly. Yes.
Like also another linguistic thing, names are also pronouns. So I have some friends who struggle with the they them pronoun, and they just use my name instead of a pronoun. So if you're even like, if not everyone is out to their parents either. So when you guys are in like interacting with this and you're getting this sense, you're getting this feeling, I'd say err on the side of caution, err on the side of neutrality as far as the language goes. Like, don't double down on terminology like daughter or son. Go for child. Like,
Yes.
for example, to everyone else, mom refers to me as her youngest. My sister refers to me as sibling. You know, like using that language, because oftentimes, like, that's the best way to kind of like respect the person, but also not kind of go head to head with the perceptions of whoever it is that you're speaking to and interacting with and connecting with.
I'm just, I guess where my brain goes to is because once the mother had told me that the child was non-binary, then I kept saying they them.
Yeah.
And she was the one that said they weren't concerned so much with that. And I still like, no, it's still they them.
Yeah, that's because honestly,
your child has died by suicide. It mattered.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
A lot of us will kind of play it down when they're a lot of, so I will correct my close friends for sure. I don't correct the person at the drive-through. Like, if random person misgenders me or random person says it in passing, I am like, you're going to be in my life for approximately 4 seconds. Like, I don't care. I don't want to put that, like, I don't want to waste my energy. But a lot of us too there's people in our lives, a lot of us with parents or siblings or other relatives, we just won't correct, and we'll say it doesn't matter. It does. We're saying it doesn't matter because we're hoping that if we are compliant, that we will get love and acceptance. And so a lot of people kind of go that route. I personally don't, because I am too goddamn old and been through too much to, like, if you don't love me, bye. That's how it's got to be for me. But there is still, especially you'll find with younger trans people, they'll say like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, oh, you'll see they'll use like she, they pronouns, or he and they pronouns, or like, I don't matter. Like, any pronouns are good. Chances are they actually do have a preference, but they're trying to be easygoing and accessible so that they don't deal with the kind of violence and rejection that we often deal with and often see. So if you are getting that sense that there is, even if mom's saying, no, like they didn't care, and what they are telling you is that they do care and it's they, them, go with they, them.
Okay. Yeah, because I just think that I care more about what spirit being the voice of spirit than how the sitter is going to take the information that I give.
Yeah.
Quite frankly,
you're giving voice to someone who's voiceless, quite frankly.
Exactly.
And like, that's more important. That supersedes.
And that's for anybody who's being discriminated against, as in addition to, you know, what you've gone through. So, okay. Thanks for the clarity.
No problem, Mom. Does anyone else have anything they want to? Also, if you have a question, if you think of something in an hour, just get in touch with Mom.
Thank you.
Murphy, you can unmute.
Yeah, okay. Hi, this is kind of following along the same lines, because I'm very much a beginner medium, but I've had one spirit come through who I was just like, well, I'm just not getting a gender. And then the sitter was telling me that this person was kind of showing both, like in their lives, like both. But I guess, had a preference or identified as more as one, at least publicly, but had a side. So I'm just kind of I don't know who's the better to answer this question. Like, how would they usually come through? Like, how would you, like in a reading specifically, how would you figure out how they?
So there's
like,
there's a kind of like a piece of being non-binary that you'll have people who are very gender fluid, who we change like one to the other, like back and forth and what have you. Honestly, like, go with what you feel, with whoever is coming through, how they're presenting, how you're feeling their energy. And like, if someone is gender fluid, maybe they are in this instance presenting more feminine, because we do in life, you know, like honor that, acknowledge that. I mean, like I said, tend to like, if you're feeling unsure, then using that neutral language is really important, because it also means that you're not wrong, quite frankly. And there are times where people can see, like, kind of mid conversation, when my energy switches and when it flows from a more feminine side to a more masculine side, and how that kind of comes out. And I guarantee you're going to feel that too. Like, just stay attuned to it, pay attention to it, trust your instincts on that. If in doubt, the neutral language. And there's also just, if it truly doesn't matter to the spirit, to the person, then that's going to come through too. If it's just kind of like wibbling all over the place, then refer to them by their name. It may be that, because like, my gender is a huge part of my identity, yes, but it's not the entirety of my identity. It's not the only thing that is important to me or about me. And it is not the only thing that I struggle with or deal with. Honestly, like, my gender is the only thing I don't struggle with, quite frankly. Like, everything from like my skin to waking up on time for work is things that I struggle with. My gender, I'm fine with. I'm actually quite cool with it. So when you're encountering these individuals, feel free to, like, you'll have what the person you're talking to is telling you, and you'll have what, you know, the spirit is telling you. And I even as a beginner, I'm sure, like, you've begun to kind of like sense like the difference a little bit in who's approaching you, right?
Yeah.
So rely on your instincts. Don't second guess yourself.
Yeah, because in this case, it was interesting too, because I was like, the sitter was able to identify who I was getting from the other information. And I think that to the sitter, it was also a clue that I was not getting a clear gender. Like, to them, to the sitter, that was a clue that, like, yeah, that's how this person was. So
it's entirely possible that person wasn't out to your sitter.
Yeah.
Like, we don't tell everyone all the time.
Yeah. No, the sitter knew that this person was kind of going, kind of like switching, kind of kind of both ways. So I in this case, I think that it was a clue to them. Yeah. I'm just wondering how in general, then, I guess it's just pay attention to whatever is coming in.
Sounds like you got it right, honestly.
in that case, luckily enough, I did, I guess, but yeah. All right. Thank you.
I think you would just stick with the they or them. Honestly.
Yeah.
I know for myself now that I will go with the proper name, that their preferred name as well. But
correction. So
their chosen name.
Yeah. So here's a language.
That's their proper name.
For a chunk of time, preferred pronouns and preferred name were the verbiage that was used. That's we don't go with that anymore, because the idea of preferred pronouns and preferred name means that, oh, you prefer it, but it's not actually real. No, it's my name. It's my name. It's my pronouns. I would prefer that you get it right. But but yes, the idea, like you will have heard probably, I'd say circa 2012 to 2015, the terms preferred name and preferred pronoun were used, but it's vague language. So now we just go like, what are your pronouns and what is your name? And so whether or not it's your legal name necessarily, like it's a lot of folks who have gone through divorce don't necessarily like legally change their last name back. They still will go by like whatever their unmarried name was, but like legally still have the married name or what have you. Like it's not about preferred. It's like, what's your name? What should you be called versus what is like the legal name? But yes, name as pronoun is good, and their chosen name is of utmost importance. If you know it, if you have it, use it. Don't dead name us. It sucks. We don't like it.
Well, no, that's I thought proper name is your preferred name, right? Like that's wrong word, I guess. Proper name is
preferred just leaves margin for alternatives where there shouldn't be.
Okay.
I'm thinking, reading then, because often the sitter gives the name. I want to hear about so and so. So it's the name that the sitter chooses to use for them.
Yeah.
Which may not have been the name that they used.
I feel like you'll probably be able to, like, if the person coming through chafes against that name, I guarantee you'll be able to feel that. Even if you don't know what their chosen name was. Like in that instance, you do have to go off of what you're given, which sucks. But when you have when you have the correct information, I encourage you to use that instead.
But we have a thing with spirit in spirit development is that spirit knows their name. Mm-hmm. Getting names can be tricky, but spirit knows their name. Spirit knows their life, and spirit will not withhold that. We just have to learn to interpret what they give us so that we can give that to you. So that's where, if you get a name, great, but stick with, they, them, kind of be safe if that's what you need to do. And on the flip side of that, because we would be having members from the LGBTQ, I've even watched, some of the TV mediums doing readings for various prominent members of the LGBTQ community, where they're bringing through a parent, a relative, somebody that, again, I do find that it's mostly just love, but I've even been on the hotlines where I've had somebody message me and like just be gutted because I said the wrong thing, and I felt horrible, but I thought, okay, I have to really evaluate how I say things. So I think in that context, again, it's not that I misgendered or anything, but this person was wanting vengeance for a betrayal. And I was trying to smooth the waters, and that didn't go well. So you have to be mindful.
Alrighty. Any other questions? Because I gotta skedaddle shortly.
Yeah, if anybody wants to unmute and say anything. Max, I just want to thank you again. I am honored and blessed that you joined us this evening and provided us the insight. I know I've learned some new things again. Thank you. Nibbling is...
So I have a sister, Amanda. Amanda has 2 kids, Allie and Avery. Allie and Avery are my nibblings.
Okay, nibblings. I
Ah,
love it.
I love it.
Okay. Yes. Mix Max. I love it.
I know, it's just my name. It's
Yes,
just my
I
name
know.
that it doesn't work with. It's
Yeah, but I
literally
didn't,
just me.
I wasn't aware of that. So I just want to
I
say
have
again,
one-
Max, thank you. Oh, Kieran.
I have just one clarification. I just want Max to repeat that last part where I'm just trying to recall, because you mentioned if I'm Christine Rogerson, I come on board. This is how I introduce myself. I'm Christine Rogerson. I'm he, she. How does that, is that a politically correct way now we could address ourselves?
Yeah.
Me, yes.
So everyone's got pronouns. Like whether you're cisgender or transgender, you do have pronouns. Typically, it is like, I guess in past years, transgender people will, like at the end of my email, like my email tag where it says my signature, where it says my name, and if I'm at the time working for an organization, what the organization is, like where you can reach me, and then I'll put my pronouns. You'll see this a lot now with more people kind of becoming aware of this. Instagram, like on Instagram, you can set your pronouns in your bio, and that just lets people know how they can refer to you by. So in this kind of format where you're speaking, when you introduce yourself and you say what your pronouns are, by you doing that, it creates, first of all, if someone says, oh, my name is so-and-so, these are my pronouns, automatically that tells me that you have some knowledge and some understanding and probably some acceptance of me. Like that is a huge green flag for me. That tells me that like you've got, like you've heard something, you've heard a TED talk, you've heard something like this, you've talked to someone like me, and you recognize like kind of the importance of that. But it also creates a safe place because it means that like somebody who is trans isn't outing themselves as trans automatically by saying what their pronouns are. So it is becoming a very, very common thing. And like I said, in a couple of years ago, Facebook made it so that you could set your pronouns, and rather than it just be he, she, they also added they. A lot of social medias are doing it. A lot of corporations that are a little bit more on the progressive side are beginning to encourage people to put those in like their corporate email handles or in their, you know, like LinkedIn profile and such like that. So it is becoming more and more common across the board.
Okay, so if I am, if I put my pronouns, I put, it's either it's either she or her, right?
Yeah, you go she
And if I
slash
see
her.
okay, so if it's someone who's binary, how would they put it on that?
So someone would basically just say my pronouns are like he slash him or she slash her, or you'll have
We don't know.
my pronouns are they them. Well, no, it's like he's just saying like refer to me as he, refer to me as she, refer to me as they. Interesting, there are some other pronouns that are kind of derivatives of other languages. I would encourage you to look those up. They're very interesting. They're not super common though. You won't run into them more like particularly often. Outside of like trans spaces where like we kind of have a handle on them. Typically you will basically run into he, she, or they as pronouns.
And you can always ask what their preferred pronoun is, right, Max?
Again, we're gonna like drop the word preferred.
Oh,
What are your pronouns?
what are your oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So
Yep.
that was a very important way. That's what I want to ask. Would I be rude if I was asking what is,
Not at all.
What is your pronoun?
Not at
Because
all.
you come across as the new generation to me, and I feel that you really have the beat on how we were to
A lot of
communicate.
people feel like it would be rude to ask what someone's pronouns are. Anyone who gets offended by being asked what their pronouns are, it's probably a jerk, quite frankly. Like it's if they're that willing to shut down that question, like that's a really reasonable question. A lot of the younger people, a lot of people in my position, again, it's the same thing. If you say, like, I have never been anything but overjoyed by someone coming up to me asking me my pronouns. Been like, oh my God, you get it. You've done some research, you've heard something, you've watched a YouTube clip, like you have some kind of baseline knowledge. And honestly, this also means that I don't have to put myself out there all the time. I get to just answer a question, and it's, yeah, my pronouns are they, them. Like, thanks so much for asking. What are your pronouns? Like, it is not a rude question at all. And anyone who does treat it as a rude question is not coming to that conversation in good faith.
Okay, I really appreciate that. That was, I think, the biggest takeaway that I could learn from here, because to start the conversation in a safe space as well.
Yeah.
For both of us, for another person.
Yeah, it would, like, it anytime anyone has come to me with that, it has honestly just made me a lot more comfortable just right out the gate. I was like, thank God, like that is such a green light for me. That means that I can talk to you, and even if like you don't have to know absolutely everything about what it's like to be trans, but you know enough to ask that question, and you're coming to me like trying to understand who I am rather than just assuming who you think I am. So that's a
Lisa.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to thank you. It's been really a learning experience. I have worked, it's been a couple of years now, I mentioned this to your mom, with the trans community in Mexico. So, you know, I'm behind on the language in English. I don't usually speak English during the day, and I don't think in English. So it's taken me a while to learn, right? Like this thing of nibblings. I don't know. I'm going to have to ask now, what is that in Spanish? In Spanish, they actually made up, I guess, the pronoun. It didn't exist in the language. Todes. It todos is everybody, or todas is female everybody. So, you know, getting this in English, and well, there's just a few comments. Like when you said about this mix-mac, it made me think, I have a colleague who works with the Mi'kmaq language right there in Canada, right? You have a Mi'kmaq population, so that's kind of cool and cute. And it's just been, you know, it leaves me a lot of thinking as far as English goes, and some of those things will transfer. I do know we have a community here in Oaxaca that is, it's called Juchitan. It's not near where you went to, Christine, but it's in the mountains, and they do have a different way of accepting everybody, as also the Sioux or the Dakota, Nakota, Lakota people. It also brings a lot of, you know, questions, because with the Lakota people, and when I say that, I mean all Sioux, Lakota, Dakota, and Dakota, because they speak just a variation of the language. Children grow up learning the mother's language, what they call, and it is a completely, I'm going to put this in layman's terms because I'm a linguist. So they learn a dialect, let's say, that they speak, children to moms. When a young man, you know, gets a little older, then he starts to learn the gendered language of the men. But there's also an acceptance, a complete acceptance of any kind of different view of identity. So here, you know, we talk about it, you're talking about identity construction. You're also talking about the subjective part and the objective part. The objective part of all of us that may, you know, have a thought on what your identity or what my identity is, but you also inside yourself have your subjective one. So, you know, it's just really interesting, and it's extremely important to educate the public. I know that it's not your job to do it, but in history, it ends up like
it's a little bit my job, because I do it like somewhat occupationally.
Well, I'm glad you're doing it, because who else is going to do the job that you're doing, you know, if it doesn't come from the subjectiveness of somebody in your shoes, right? Yeah. So I'm just very, very thankful for this talk. I was looking forward to it. Your mother can tell you, because I was like, a week ago I thought it was going to be, and then this week. And thank you very much.
I didn't have a voice last week, unfortunately. I
know you had
getting
to
over a cold.
off. But
No.
thank you. And I do agree with I don't know who said that, Murray. I guess it was Kelly, about braveness. You know, you've taken a big choice. You can be who you are subjectively, and in society just shut up and, you know, not look for problems. You can still do it without looking for problems, and you're going to find them, because anybody that's different in any part, it seems like, of society gets that. I mean, I can't imagine people in Saudi Arabia. I mean, Israel, I've been there, worked there, and it's a different story. Well, if you're not looking at the political Palestinian Jews, right? But it's a much more open society if you're not in the old city. But Haifa, Tel Aviv, you know, that fits. But can you imagine being like in being in Saudi Arabia? I've been in Jordan. Yeah, you know, when you walk down the street in Jordan, if you're with a man and you're a woman, you don't go touching in the street, but they're still much more flexible. So, I mean, this world has a lot to learn. And
that young lad at my job that was asking weird things the other day while trying to make small talk, he goes like, oh, well, like, what do you travel? What kind of countries do you want to go to? And I was like, the ones where being trans isn't illegal. Like, kind of got to Google things first before I start making my bucket list.
Definitely. Well, I was working with a woman from she's from the United States, lives in France, but she is a photographer, a very famous photographer, and she did a really cool thing with transvestites and transsexuals in Turkey. And it was a learning experience. We did something here. We brought the exposition here to see about how they changed the identity card, right? So this was probably 12, 15 years ago. So immediately, once they went through whatever testing, they got checked out and blah, blah, blah. Then they give them a pink card or a blue card, which I also find totally, you know. But hey, you're talking about a Muslim culture. You're talking about the Ottoman society. So, yep, we got a lot to learn. And thank you for, you know, helping us understand. And I know with your mom, I've made that mistake. It's like, you know, because in English, I still don't think that way. And in Spanish, you know, todes doesn't even exist unless somebody tells me, yeah, we're todes, you know. And usually I find them in vegan restaurants, people, they'll be very clear. They have a restaurant, they'll tell us, but you don't find it. And in the university I work in, yes, we have a very strong population of people that are different in many, many ways, not just, you know, transgender, but there is an equality there. But you step out of the university walls and, oh my gosh, you know, you're back in the dark ages again. But thank you. And thanks for all you're doing to help this change come about. And well, hope you have a nice evening and good luck with your work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again. Oh, Tricia, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi. Excuse me. Sorry, I keep disappearing. Max, I just really wanted to thank you for doing this. I'm not used to the pronoun thing, so I apologize, but I have a child who's also going through the transgender journey. Came out to us about 4 years ago. And I understand the whole death part, but at the same time, I have been trying to be nothing but loving and supportive. And I said, you know, anything we go through is our problem. But just hearing, I mainly wanted to just thank you, because hearing from somebody else and your point of view and your struggles, and it just really opened my eyes even more. And I was hoping for more understanding, because the more I understand, the more that I can help my own child. And it's going through all of this has opened my eyes to the whole LGBTQ community, I was, raised from very prejudiced family who, when I was young, it's if you were gay, you're supposed to beat them up, and or it was a sin and you go to hell. So, I'm proud to say that I have turned around completely, and I really thank you, because learning from you, it helps me to know how I can maybe help others and definitely help my own family. So I just really wanted to thank you.
You're very welcome. And the fact that you're here and willing to learn speaks volumes to you as a mother.
Thank you.
Of course.
I just have something to say real quick regarding the preferred. I can really understand that, because it's like, it's not something you preferred, it's just who you are.
Exactly.
It wasn't a choice. This is who you are,
Perfect.
So yeah.
Yep. It was preferred it was kind of when we were trying to tiptoe in through the door about 10 years ago, and we were just trying to like see like if people were willing to accept us. Then yeah, we did use it's the same thing as the, oh well, like you can call me like whatever, but no, do call me they them. That's how it is. But we were trying to be easygoing and trying to be, like understandable.
Yeah, that's like me sitting somewhere and somebody making a really bad comment about my child and me just laughing when inside I'm just dying inside, really just,
There's
And then you've got those attitudes, which we don't have the word for it in Spanish, but patronizing, which I absolutely hate. So they patronize you and they go so far that you just, now that you're talking about the he / his and then her, I've now noticed it in many of the courses that I've taken on Zoom. And I didn't really quite understand. I was looking at the person and I was like, oh, didn't have their name, but they put the pronoun. And I was like, oh, well, I didn't even think about that part.
You'll start to notice it more now that now that I've said it, you'll start to pick up on it more.
And we'll start getting more from spirit too. I guarantee you this week. Oh,
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I actually firmly believe it. And I kind of haven't, because we were talking about last night, I know you got to go, Max. We were talking, Kieran is in a culture where it's very difficult for Kieran to come out of the spiritual closet. And I mean, mediums and psychics, in various cultures, like Louisa was talking about, so if we try to look at just our own journey and our own fears of what we've gone through, just a smidge, and kind of amplify it 1,000 times, we have a better understanding of what you have gone through. And I think your strength and your tenacity and your voice will empower us to be better psychic mediums and be better stewards for the spirit community. So I truly do thank you, Max.
And changing so many lives. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The number of lives you've changed in this room we're gonna go out. I mean, just like that whole butterfly effect.
Yeah.
That's why I do it.
And be more respectful. We don't even realize that we're being disrespectful. And maybe nobody ever stopped us because they're afraid also, to fluff a feather or maybe get in trouble or whatever. But yeah, that's the whole thing of being conscious, right? Is lifting the veil, and that awareness can come to. So thank you. I'm sure we're going to get, a lot of more topics and talk about this. And maybe we'll ask you to come back and help us some more.
Absolutely.
My schedule contingent, I'd be more than happy to.
Okay, I hope you feel better.
Yeah, I do.
By the way, your mom's a great teacher too.